Okay, good evening everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's True Crime with Jess Rose. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Tuesdays are my request evenings. Thursdays are stories that I like to bring to you. I'm also over on TikTok, which is Jess Rose 5472. You could join my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Jess Rose 5472. You think I'd know it by now, or you could subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Or you could just watch. And I'd appreciate that just as much. Now that I've got all that out of the way, I want to apologise. You will hear a noise in the background. Nothing I can do about it, but I'm just going to talk loud. So, yes, I am aware of the noise. And it won't happen again. But for tonight, there's nothing I can do about it. So, okay. Now, this, as the title says, is the horrific Phillip Nicholson story. I heard about this through one of my subscribers, and then I saw it on Killer Britain with Dermot Monaghan. I never pronounce his surname correctly. But it's Killer Britain, which is a documentary that I've watched on it. Absolutely awful case. Very, very sad. Very similar to Gemma Hayter, Sean Rossington, Jennifer Doherty, Ian Irving. There's so many cases that I've done. It's sad to say how similar it is to some of those cases. So I'm going to begin now. So we've got Phillip, put my teeth back in, Phillip Nicholson. Now, he was born in 1993 in Dorset in England, to mum Michelle and dad Chris and then Nicholson. He's an only child to the pair. Okay. Now, such a sweet lad. Such a sweet boy. He early on, though, his parents found out that he had a global developmental delay. Along with this, he also was diagnosed with autism. Now, Philly, or as his mum would call him, Philly. Now, I'm not going to call him that. It seemed like that was maybe his mum's nickname for him. So I'm just going to call him Philip. Now, he was very, very close to his family, Philip. Everything I've heard about this lad, he seems the sweetest boy in the world. Just the sweetest lad in the world. So he's very close to his family. Like I say, he's an only child, especially close to his granddad. Now, they would go on adventures, that it was called, around Dorset, when he wasn't with his parents as he was growing up, while they were at work, etc. And it was said they were literally best friends, him and his granddad. They just loved each other's company. Now, he was a very kind, caring boy. Loved his family. Absolutely loved his family. Now, his parents were very, very protective over him, as you can imagine. And these, they had to be as he was growing up. He had difficulty. Philip's difficulties were in reading people and reading situations. He wouldn't be able to tell if the person he was talking to had ill intentions towards him. He just couldn't read situations well at all. And I've got people in my life who they just think everything's sunshine and rainbows, and they just don't realize. And because they're so protected growing up, they just think the world is like that. They think the world is just this, where everyone's going to love them and they can love everyone else. And it's very, very sad that that's they can't remain like that forever. But unfortunately, they do grow up, they get older, and when we get to 2013, and this is in Bournemouth. Philip's about 20. He decided he wanted more independence, which I can't imagine the heart drop that must have gave his parents maybe the first time he started talking about it, because it would throw it in you, because you've kept this child safe, and I suppose maybe in cotton wool a little bit for their entire life, and then all of a sudden they're an adult and they, like everyone else, deserve to have independence, deserve to be able to go out there and live their lives and experience the world. But I think when that kind of sixth sense, or that feeling that you might get in your stomach, that someone's not a good person, or a situation can be dangerous, we've all got that kind of feeling. Some people don't know. Some people don't have that feeling. They don't have that internal warning that someone might not be the nicest person in the world to be around. And I can't imagine the concern his parents must have felt at that time. But he moves into an assisted living complex of around 6 flats. And his parents, like I say, were so worried, but they hoped that this would give him the freedom that he wanted, while still having help when needed, plus the other people in the complex. I think they were just hoping against hope that, obviously whatever they'd instilled into him, and then having those people around him, it would keep him safe, whilst giving him that freedom that he desperately wanted. Now, some professionals that had been assessing Philip, believed he could cope not only with living on his own, but also entering into an adult relationship, which he hadn't had. And there was some professionals that believed he would cope with that okay. But his own doctor the doctor that had known him for many, many years, wasn't so sure, and wasn't too keen on the idea. Now, so Philip moves in, and he looks after his little flat. He's still looking after himself. He's getting to grips with navigating this new life that he's got. And although he seemed to enjoy having his own space, he would call his mum on most evenings, and he would tell her that he felt lonely. He'd looked at his parents his whole life, and they had a good relationship and died on him, and that was his image of a relationship and how a relationship should be, and that's what he wanted. And he was just struggling with the fact that he felt, now I'm out on my own, and that's the next step that he wanted. No, like I say, and he just really wanted a girlfriend to love, and he wanted someone who would love him back. Now we get to March 2014, okay? And Philip believes his dreams have come true. He does. Excuse me. Because through a dating app, he meets a girl called Isabella Gosling. Now, I don't know who introduced him to this dating app. It's a shame that, I know a lot of people meet their partners on dating apps. I'm not mocking, I'm not, that's not the right word, but I'm not knocking that. But I just feel for Philip, maybe a dating app wasn't the best place, but this is where he met her. Now, Isabella Gosling. She was around his age, but she had atypical autism. Now, I had to look up this because I know there's so many different types of names of people on the spectrum, to the point where then they just ended up putting it all under one umbrella. And ASD, so it is autism spectrum disorder, and that includes a lot under that umbrella. But atypical autism, it has variable symptoms, where individuals may show some but not all of typical autism. It's less severe, it's unevenly distributed or delayed in appearance. Okay, so that was the description of atypical autism. And she also had personality disorders, a couple apparently. Can't find what they were. I have questions of Isabella's mental difficulties. Is that what you say? Mental difficulties? I'll explain that a little bit further on. But that's for now what we believe she was diagnosed with. Okay. Now, as I said, they quickly got very chatty online and very quickly meet up. All right. And it goes from chatting online to meeting up to a full-blown relationship. It was all very, very fast, but Philip was so happy with it. This was his dream. He felt like everything was just slotting into place. He was so happy. His parents were happy for him. You know, they've gone from being so scared for him to thinking, oh my God, maybe we underestimated the situation. Maybe we didn't have to worry as much as we did. All right. Now Philip's a shy boy. All right, very shy, very reserved. Okay, and Isabella, well, she very quickly starts pushing a sexual relationship upon him that he just wasn't ready for. In my mind, I feel that maybe he would have been happy just to cuddle and hold hands, you know, and watch films together. The image I've got of him and what I've heard about him, it would seem that he would want to take it really, really slow. You know, wanting a girlfriend wasn't about that side. It was about the closeness and having someone there on those evenings, you know, where he was lonely. He wanted to share his life with somebody. And the sexual side, he wasn't ready for. He wasn't ready for that at all. Well, Isabella didn't really want to give Philip much choice, and very quickly he was forced into this sexual relationship that, as I've made clear, he wasn't ready to have. Okay. Now his parents very quickly after this began to realise their son's new girlfriend was extremely manipulative, very manipulative. And adult services, now remember I said he's in assisted living, all right, and they began to notice some things too, and they were very involved in his care, and they began to get suspicious that she was taking money off him as well. So not only is she forcing him into a sexual relationship that, like I say, he wasn't ready to be in, she's taking money off him as well. It's just not a good sign. It's not a good beginning of a relationship when this is, you know, at the beginning. This is the get-go. This is let's go from the starting block. You know, it's going to go downhill. But he couldn't see that. He couldn't, and he felt that he's got this girl finally. He's got a girlfriend. And he doesn't want to see that she's maybe not a good person, or maybe what she's doing's not to be expected, but so early on in a relationship especially. And his parents gently approached him at first, and they approached us and they said, you know, trying to explain to him and say it as gently as they could, but he doesn't want to hear that. Of course he doesn't. You know, this is what he's wanted, and you know, this cycle of abuse, which is what it was, it continued for a while. You know, not only was she sexually abusing him and financially abusing him, she was physically abusing him quite quickly. He begins to show bruises on himself, and he was such a gentle character. He was such a sweet boy. And the thought of, I mean, she was a big girl. She was a big girl, was Isabella. He didn't stand a chance, really. And it's very, very sad to think of that happening. It really is. Now, the people in his life, of course, upon seeing all this, are getting more and more concerned. You know, really, really concerned. Now, she's still treating him as an ATM. She's physically, emotionally abusing him. All of this is going on. Eventually, he sees that maybe she's not the best for him. So he tries to distance himself while she's still taking money off him. But at the same time, she resumes a relationship with an ex-partner that she had called Richard Moores. Now, Richard Moores is about 25. And let me tell you a little bit about Richard. Okay, Richard was a violent, nasty piece of work. He was not a good guy. Okay, he had a history of exploiting vulnerable adults. Okay, so even Isabella herself, he probably wasn't the greatest person for her to be around either, if you class her as vulnerable, right? He was often homeless, and what he'd do, he'd take advantage of people who were vulnerable, and he'd convince them to allow him to stay with them. And he was described as a predator. He was, you know, he was known to police. He just wasn't a good guy. He wasn't a good guy at all, okay? No. Isabella resumed this relationship with Richard, while still kind of in this on and off thing with Philip. Although I think he was still hanging on. He was starting to realise that she's not that person I thought she was. But he was very torn, because she would at times seem really kind and really nice, and she'd drag him back in, and he'd think, I mean, maybe it'd remind him of when they first met, you know, over the internet, and then the first couple of weeks, because I don't think it was long at all before she turned. But maybe he was just hoping it'd go back to that. So it was very on and off, and it must have been very confusing to him, which is again this emotional abuse of him, because then she'd message him and she'd be saying, I hate you and I don't want anything to do with you, while still taking his money. You know, it must have blew his brain. It really would. She'd go from being sweet to him to being vile, abusive text messages over and over about, like I say, how much she hated him. But now I've heard two things. Either she got him to open a joint account, or somehow she got him to give her a bank card. Okay, so I've heard two aspects of that. But either way, she gets his bank card, and her and Richard are like Christmas, they withdraw £800 on this lad. Now, I'm assuming Philip's not working. You know, he would be on a disability payment of some sort. But it wouldn't have been a lot. He wouldn't have got a lot of money. He would have just got enough to get by, I would assume. £800 is a lot of money. And they cleared him out. She also got a phone contract in her own name, but that Philip was paying for. And by this point, Philip knows now she's back with Richard. You know, it's so messy. It's so messy. It's such a shame. It really is. And by this point, as I've said, she was sending these messages to him, these vile messages, and then she'd be nice to him. Well, Richard wanted to take part in that. He was like, well, this looks like fun. Well, let me start doing this. And he does. He starts messaging Philip with these vile text messages. But then he'd message him nicely and be like, we can be friends, don't worry. You know, come on, come round, we're friends. Just, oh, such a shame. Now, Philip's parents noticed he was losing weight. He wasn't taking as much care of himself by this point. He wasn't shaving as often. He'd normally be very clean shaven. That had started to take a hit. You know, his dad had noticed this going on. Just basically, his hygiene had gone really downhill. Now, his dad went round, because his dad had just had enough of all this. He went round to Philip's and he actually deleted their numbers out of Philip's phone, hoping he could just distance him long enough to get him away from this weird, strange couple and situation that Philip had found himself in. Now, what's really sad is, obviously she must have gone round because the numbers deleted, or she's got in touch again. But it just carried on with these vile messages and then being nice and then being vile and being nice. Ugh, I just can't imagine what it was like. And his dad did say when he went round to his flat to delete these numbers that the flat was, that he used to keep really clean and tidy, was now neglected and dirty. And as I've said, Philip, his hygiene had gone downhill. Oh, it's just, you know, obviously everyone could see that this was a real bad problem. They were trying everything. They were trying everything to get this rotten pair away from him, but he was still living on his own. So they were getting hold of him when no one was around. They were messaging him at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, when there was no one around him. And he just wasn't strong enough to be like, delete. He wasn't that type of person. He would believe what was being said in these messages, especially the nice ones. He'd wipe away what they'd been saying and think, oh no, they really are my friends. You know, now we get to late 2014 and Philip, he's finally had enough. He's finally had it and he decides to cut her out, okay? He cuts her out and he cuts Richard out. Because don't forget, Richard's pretending to be his friend. You know, let's not talk about how he's come in and that was his girlfriend. And he's talking, you know, there's all that kind of messy stuff as well. But he cuts them both off, all right? And his family were so relieved. Oh, they were so relieved. But it was just a brief reprieve from everything that was going on. It didn't last long. Because Isabella, she announces she's pregnant. She's pregnant, apparently. Pregnant. The fingers are up, okay? Because I can't see any proof this girl was pregnant. And yet, every documentary or message or anything that I've found, it always states it in the affirmative that she was pregnant. And I'm like, no, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? I'll explain why I feel like this towards the end, alright? But she announces she's pregnant, says she's having a boy, apparently. And it was Philip's as a real kicker. It's yours. Just to me, so just a reeling back in. Except that she also told Richard it was his baby too. And as I said, no one knows if this girl was actually ever pregnant. No one knows. Now, Philip told his parents that he wanted to get back with her for the sake of the baby. I don't think this meant back in a relationship with her. I don't think that's what he meant. I think just back in touch with her, because he wanted to be there for this baby. He truly believed there was a little boy, and he wanted to be in this baby's life. He wanted to be his dad. It was like a dream come true for him, and he would do anything to see that through. She's rotten. Now Richard, well, he also wanted this family unit, and he decided Philip had to go. I just don't understand this girl. I just don't get it. I don't understand. Okay. So we're in 2015 now, and the pair, they increased their mistreatment of Philip. They do, physically and emotionally. Okay, because of course he's still coming round, because he doesn't want to lose the chance to meet his son, you know. Now the pair, now another time, Michelle, she gets a call from Philip. All right. Now Michelle, sorry, is his mum. All right. She gets a call from him, and he's upset. He's on the phone. He's really upset. And as I've said, they've really ramped up this physical and emotional abuse of him. And she's like, what's the matter? And he says, look, Richard was waiting for me down this road, and I've got scared, and I've ran, and I've wet myself. Oh God. Oh, and he ran through the town. So Michelle obviously tells him to come straight round. She runs him a bath so he can get himself cleaned up. He's 22 now, and this cretin has caused him to wet himself out of fear. She says that when he got into the bath, he looked like a skeleton. He was so thin. I mean, I don't know if this was possibly because he couldn't eat with what they were putting him through, or he couldn't afford to eat because they were taking all his money. I don't know why, but he was so thin. And he told the police a couple of times about what this pair had been doing to him. And Morley was with Michelle that day. I don't know if it was while he was in the bath or when he got out, but he just says, why won't anyone listen to me? And it's just so sad. So sad. Now, around this time, Isabella and Richard, okay, they start telling him that there's a girl called Amy who wants to meet him. Now remember, now we're fully aware that Richard and Isabella are in a relationship. They're keeping Philip hanging on, well, Isabella is, by this baby. But to keep him coming around as often as they wanted, they knew the way to get him there was to say there was a girl that he could meet. They knew how much he wanted a girlfriend and to be in a relationship. And it was just that they knew between the baby and offering this relationship, they could draw him back in as often as they wanted. Now, the girl they were saying who wants to meet him is, as I've said, is called Amy. All right? Now, they even put Amy on the phone to talk to Philip. It's not Amy. It was Isabella. Amy never existed. Amy never existed, sorry. And they'd get him to go to places to meet up with this Amy and just leave him there for hours because his mum said he had no real concept of time, and plus he would believe them that this girl was going to meet up with him, and they were just getting their kicks out of it. They were just having fun at his expense and sending him out to God knows where to meet up with this non-person. Oh God, it's just so sad. Okay, now we get to the 4th of May 2015. All right, and Philly, he goes out with his family. All right, and they go to Harry Potter World, and something he was so excited to do. They had the best day. They had the most amazing day as a family. And on the way home, he says to his dad, he says, "Dad, I've had such a lovely day. Thank you so much." Oh, God. Now, what his mum had noticed throughout the day, even though he'd been enjoying himself and he'd been having fun, they all had, she noticed his phone going off constantly. You know, text messages just ding, 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 ding. And she'd say, "Who's that?" or "Is that them?" And he'd just kind of dismiss it. And he'd be like, "It's fine, it's fine." But we know that what was on those text messages was Richard. While this man is enjoying his time with his family and, you know, and his granddad and just wanting to have just a bit of peace that day, Richard was texting him, "I'm going to murder you, so dig your own grave." And just vile messages, both of them. But that was the one that stuck out. "I'm going, dig your own grave." I mean, this poor innocent, just such a shame. Now, they then after this, they invite him round to Isabella's flat, okay, because Isabella has got her own place, and they invite him round on a pretense of, "Oh, we're friends, and Amy's coming round, come and meet her." Oh, God. But when he gets there, he's accused of raping Isabella. Apparently, at some point, he'd done that to her. This is what she told Richard. She told Richard he raped me at some point or other. And I mean, I don't even know if Richard believed her. It said that he did, but I don't know. I don't think this guy needed an excuse to be vile to Philip. So I don't know why she felt the need to say this. There's no proof that this ever happened from anybody, anywhere. Just her say so. And they subjected him to such a severe attack in her flat, to the point where he managed to escape out of a bedroom window, Philip did, and just ran for his life away from them. Just awful people. I don't know what to say about them. I really don't. Now then, on the 20th of May 2015, okay, the pair, under the pretense again of Amy, and using Philip's bank card, all right, they book a room in a pub called the George, okay, and they book it for 3 nights. He's paying for this, by the way, but they book this room for 3 nights at this pub. And again, they convince him to come round, to come and meet Amy. And it's like, oh God, I can't imagine being his parents and just wanting to shake him and be like, look what they did. You had to jump out of her window, her bedroom window. I'm not saying it was onto any, I didn't hear it was any drop of any sort. Maybe it was like a ground floor type deal. But, and there's neither here nor there, but you've had to do that, and he goes round, and oh, your heart just breaks. Your heart just breaks for this guy. He mustn't have known if he was coming or going, but they convince him to come round again to meet Amy. And as soon as he got there, Richard started attacking him again. And they wouldn't let him leave. I mean, they booked this room for 3 nights, but eventually he manages to get away. I don't know how he ran from that, or whether it was they kept him there the whole 3 nights, because they did keep taking him from his family and trying to keep him away from them. It's just so heartbreaking to think of. I can't imagine being his parents. I keep bringing up his parents. He's their only child. He's their baby boy, and there's nothing they can do. Ugh. Now, his family kept telling him to stay away, as I've said. He'd be bruised constantly. You know, I've heard the saying that his persecutors were his rescuers in that type, and his rescuers were his persecutors, meaning, you know, the ones that were causing him pain would also be the ones to try and say, oh no, come back, we're really nice people, really, you can trust us. I just can't imagine being him. But then we come to the 26th of May 2015. And it said that what happened 6 days previous at the pub was like a dry run for what was about to happen. Alright? Now, the text messages, as I've said, she'd message him early hours and things like that and start pummeling him. So he starts getting messages from Isabella from 2 a.m. Alright? Now, she's messaging him about Amy. I mean, could they not change this girl's name? Like, how often did they want to use this Amy as an excuse? But he kept believing them that this Amy was a real person. Of course, if he thinks he's talking to her, he's going to believe this is a real person. But it was just Isabella changing her voice. So they tell him that Amy's going to be round at Isabella's the next day. You know, well, later on that day, come round. So at 10 a.m, Philip heads over to meet her and Richard. Okay. Now, there's CCTV footage at around 10:30, as I've said, on the 26th of May 2015. And on the CCTV footage, you can see Richard in front, looking very cocky, with a bit swagger, trying to... Oh, God. Then behind was Isabella and Philip, alright? And he looks so nervous. You can't... There's no sound, obviously, it's CCTV, but that video tells everything in just that split second of footage. He's holding his hands, and oh, he looks so nervous. I have never had the pleasure of ever meeting Philip. I only know about him due to this case, and even I could see how nervous he looked. So his family would see that CCTV. And I can't imagine how they must have felt seeing their baby boy walking along that road. Now, they convince him to go into Isabella's, alright? And as soon as he walks in the door, alright, begins 17 minutes of just what can only be called torture. Richard beats him as soon as he walks in the door, as soon as he gets in the door. And the reason we know it's 17 minutes is because Isabella starts recording and egging the whole thing on. You know, it's over. You know, it's over. You know, it's over this rape, apparently. You know, that we know didn't happen. I just think, oh, it's just so sad now. They've got him into her bedroom, all right? And as I've said, they want him to confess. They wanted to confess to this rape, which of course he wouldn't do, because he didn't do anything. And he wouldn't confess, because he had nothing to confess to. Now, Richard then gets a knife and he stabs him in the back of the neck. And he must have, all I can take from this is he must have been slumped on her bed. And she turned round, this absolute beast of a girl, and basically says, "You're bleeding on my bed. Can you please get off?" He's bleeding. He's not just bleeding. He's bleeding out. He's bleeding out. He needs immediate help. Get off my bed. And they're asking him, well, Richard's asking him, "Are you paralysed yet? Have you stopped breathing yet?" So this isn't a game. That's why I mentioned the pub was a dry run, because they want him dead. They want him dead. And all he was saying was, I want to go home. He kept saying he was sorry and begging them and saying, "Please stop." He just said, "I just want to go home." And she's like, "You're not going home. You're not going home." Richard was like, "Have you stopped breathing yet? Are you dead yet? Can you just do it? Because no one's going to care anyway." It's all been recorded. And then Isabella turned around and said, "Finish him off." And Richard then stabs him in the neck again. And he dies. He dies in her rotten, squalid flat. I don't know who he was, but just judging on her, I imagine it's a hole. And then we know that this happened because, again, it's recorded. The audio's there of them then discussing what they should do. And they decide that they're going to make it look like a suicide. He stabbed himself in the back of the neck. Right, got it. So they then bring him into the kitchen and they prop him up against the fridge. And they put the knife in his hand. There we go. Stage the scene. Everyone's going to believe this. Us idiots. There's then CCTV of the pair leaving hers and walking hand in hand down the road. Like they haven't got a care in the world. They've just murdered this innocent poor boy, not harmed, wouldn't hurt a fly. And there they are. Just so they might as well have been skipping. And they get on the bus And there's footage of them on the bus, and they're very loved up, and she's all cuddly into him on the bus. Says they're on the way to, I think they were on the way to Weymouth, I believe, where he later on proposes to her, and she says yes. What a happy occasion. Now, with regards to her new fiance, she didn't really care that much, because she then tells one of her, I think it's her adult social workers, like adult carers, if you like. She tells them that Richard killed Phillip, and she feels sick. She doesn't know what to do. She phones them to tell them this. So police go round, they find Phillip, they see him propped up in this staged suicide, which no one would believe. They're quickly picked up, where she and Richard straight off are like, no, she already told her adult social workers that it was Richard. Now, I don't know if it's because Richard was there when the police picked them up, and she doesn't know what to say, but she said, they both start saying it was suicide, he'd done it to himself. Then the police get her phone, and they go through her phone straight away, find the footage. What were they do? What were they having a quick look at it afterwards, getting a kick out of it after the fact? But it was still on her phone. I mean, it was only later on that day or early hours of the morning, but they found her phone. So then they have to switch up the story then, because it's quite obviously now it's not suicide. And look, it's because he raped her. That's why we did it. Is it? Is it really? No, it's not. And they're both charged with murder. All right. Now, Michelle and Chris. Oh God. Michelle said that, you know, she was just going about her day when she got a knock on the door, and it was 2 female officers, or 3, I think. And she just said my world was ripped apart there and then, and she was told that a man's been found dead, and they believe it to be her son. Now, Chris, oh, it's just so sad. He's obviously utterly devastated as well. He's like, I can't imagine how they felt. I just can't, because I believe, you know, even though the police were notified and everything, maybe because the police hadn't took it seriously, maybe his parents were just hoping against hope that these people they were just bullies, but they wouldn't go too far. I don't know. Now, I've heard it was both of them, but I don't think it was. I think he accepted and pled guilty. But she pleads not guilty on because of diminished capacity, apparently. You know, really leaning in to her personality disorders and her atypical autism, which is why I said at the beginning, I don't know, all right? I don't know what to say about these conditions that apparently she had. Atypical autism, maybe, but the disorders that I've never heard, I can't find anywhere what the disorders were. Bit questionable to me. But with her pleading not guilty, of course, a trial's got to be, a trial's got to go ahead. So, right to the end, she wanted to just put this family through just going through the whole thing again. You know, they didn't need to go through what that trial put them through, but they had to watch the footage, listen to the footage. You know, Chris said he saw his son just sat against that fridge, dead. He'd seen him dying. I just can't imagine. And Chris he says, the worst thing about it was his last words were, and this is what got me. Philip's last words were, please stop. Now, as I've said, he was saying, please stop. I'm sorry. Please let me go. I want to go home. But his last words were, please stop. I just want to be friends. I just want to be friends. These people were murdering him. And he just wanted to be friends. And like I say, he was the family were forced to look at pictures and footage of their son in his final moments. I just think it's just horrific. And luckily, thank God, she was found guilty, because it's England, and sometimes I wonder, but she was. And I think what didn't help is that they were kind of smiling at each other across the court, because it was both at the same time. Oh, so he must have pled not guilty too, to be in the trial at the same time. But yeah, they were smiling at each other. I'm surprised they weren't blowing each other kisses. It didn't go down very well with the jury at all anyway. Now, they were both sentenced to life. But it's not the same as the American justice system, where life normally means life. No parole, never get out, do not pass go. But it's life. She's got a minimum of 19 years. He's got a minimum tariff of 22 years. So there's nothing to say they will, I also have to say it, there's nothing to say that they will get out after 19 or 22 years, which would only put them in their 40s. There's nothing to say they will, especially if she's still pleading, it wasn't me, it was suicide, oh no, it was because you raped me, oh no, it wasn't me, it was Richard. If she's still pulling those games, then maybe she won't get out. But that's the time they will have to do before they're even considered. All right. Now, of course, there would have to be a review, because the amount of people that were involved in this poor innocent boy's life. And the review came in 2019. Now, Barry Crook, who's the chairman of Bournemouth and Paul's Safeguarding Adults Board, he said, actions have been taken as a matter of priority to ensure that circumstances leading to deaths such as this are prevented from happening again in the future. There were key opportunities to intervene, which seems likely would have afforded Mr. Nicholson greater protection and may have restrained the behaviour of Gosling, which is Isabella, and Moores, which is Richard, for a time. So from that, is he saying it might have held them at bay for a little while if we'd have done more, but don't know if we could have stopped them. Is that what we're to read from that? No, the family issued a statement after this report was done, basically saying, sadly and upsettingly, it has become evident throughout these investigations that significant failings and omissions were made by organisations involved in Philip's care, which we strongly believe could have prevented his death. We support the findings of the report and the lessons that need to be learnt, but it provides us with no comfort having lost Philip. Oh, God. Lessons that can be learnt, lessons that will be learnt, lessons to be learnt. How many times do I say that sentence in these stories? How many times do lessons have to be learnt on the back of these innocent, vulnerable people in society, whether it's vulnerable adults, whether it's elderly, whether it's children? How many times do lessons have to be learnt? When will they be learnt? End of. Not lessons to be learned. Let's just learn them. Let's just learn the lesson and stop that happening. It's just, I get very frustrated. Like I say, I mentioned it at the beginning, you know, especially the fact he was saying I just wanted to be friends. It just reminded me so much of Jenna Haight, Sean Rossington, you know, just, there's so many of these cases where these vulnerable adults just have the pure bad luck. I don't know how they end up in the company of these vile humans. I'd spoken to my mum about this, and I says before I'd learned about Gemma Hayter, God, that was 15 years ago. I didn't know it was a thing that people go after vulnerable adults. I thought that was an unspoken thing, that you don't do that. But then I suppose when logic kicked in and you see what happens to children and anyone vulnerable in society, let alone all the other crimes that go on, but you were just referring to those, I suppose, to see that, you know, I suppose I should have realised that this is something that goes on. I just didn't. I didn't realise. And it's just so sad. Such a sad case. And as I mentioned with any child crimes that I've covered, just like them, I hope it comes to a point where I don't have to do these stories anymore. I don't want to have to do these stories anymore. And I hope that lessons will be learnt soon, so I don't do these stories anymore. But that was the horrific Phillip Nicholson story. Oh, just so sad. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. If you'd like to join in on the live. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining me again, and I will see you soon. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.